Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Business Spotlight. I am Scott McMeans with Action Coach, and I am here with Jared Maloof from Standard Wellness. And we're going to talk about his rise in his position he has right now. And he's going to get a chance to tell us all about Standard Wellness and the very unique opportunity they have to serve the clientele. So, Jared, if you would please take the time to tell us a little bit about yourself and the story of Standard Wellness.
Sure. Uh, my name, as you mentioned, is Jared Maloof, and I'm the CEO of Standard Wellness. I'm one of the 5 founders of the company. And so from the early days, I was the CFO, and then when my dear friend Eric Vaughn left the company, I took over as the CEO. And we are a vertically integrated company that operates in Ohio, Missouri, Utah, and soon to be Maryland. We cover all 3 components of the commercial supply chain. That is cultivation, where we grow marijuana, processing, where we extract marijuana into oil that is infused into gummies or vape carts or chocolates, etc. And we also have a network of dispensaries where we sell not only our own product, but the product of our competitors as well.
Wow. So what's it like to sell your competitor's product? How does that work for you?
Well, I think it's important because the patients want choice and customers alike want choice. And we do a lot of things really well at Standard Wellness. But there are other people, there are our competitors that do some things better. And it's important that the retail customer have access to a wide variety of products. We don't want to, there are some of our competitors that their shelves are stocked with 70, 75, 80% of their own material. We like to target 35% of product going through our Forest branded dispensaries as Standard Wellness product.
Okay, so explain that again. You have 35% of the product on your shelf that is yours.
Right.
What's the remaining 65%?
So in Ohio, it'd be our competitors like Buckeye Relief and Clutch Cannabis. Those are Ohio producers, Fireland Scientific, Pure Ohio Wellness. We also carry multi-state operators like Cresco and PharmaCann's products, the Botanist's products.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Interesting. That's it. I would imagine it's a very different business model than people would expect from a vertically integrated business. So explain how you've made the decision to go, and I understand choice, but why not a higher concentration of your own product versus somebody else's?
Good question, and a couple of reasons. First and foremost, we want to run our dispensaries as independent businesses that are competitive, right? And so if we were to just stock the shelves with just Standards products, patients would, and customers might go elsewhere to see a larger variety. So we want to make sure that the retail locations are running well and competitive. Because there are some independents that aren't vertically integrated and they're carrying everybody's stuff too. So we would lose an advantage. Secondly, and maybe not as important, but pretty close, is in this industry, many people are vertically integrated. So if we want to be on Buckeye Relief's shelves at their dispensaries called Amplify, it's important that our dispensaries called the Forest are carrying Buckeye Relief's products. It helps create a relationship with a company that is deeper than just if we were just buying from them or if we were just selling to them.
Now, is there any kind of challenges that you have with what would be considered price fixing or market conditions that you can have your competitor on your shelf and they have your product on their shelf? What is the regulation for handling that type of competitive, or what one could consider to be a monopoly type activity? And I'm not suggesting you are, but I understand the concept.
No, I get it. No, look, I just got off the phone with all of our competitors where we set pricing. I'm just kidding.
Please, yes.
That is
Let's
a
make sure
joke.
everybody realizes that's not
Right.
what's happening.
No, of course not. So one of the things that I think is important to note in Ohio specifically is there's 35 cultivators, there's 50 processors, and there's 130 dispensaries. We in Ohio, we are far from a monopoly. I wouldn't even characterize us as an oligopoly. There is a significant amount of choice, and the market is very competitive, and the market is efficient. Now, we're in the early days of recreational adult use marijuana, and so there are some supply constraints. So you will see elevated pricing at this moment in time versus what you would have seen 6 months ago or a year ago. But I'm highly confident that in 6 months or a year from now, we will be back to those prices that we saw once the supply chain kinks get worked out. The other markets that we operate in are similar. The state of Missouri has 60 cultivators and I think 72 processors and 210 dispensaries. So by no means is there concentration control over this space.
Okay. So there's a lot of people, not a lot, but there is a market of 3 separate businesses that you are vertically integrated into. And you work among not only the market, but your competitors to take advantage of and fill the voids that are existing because there's only so many of you.
Right.
Is that a good assessment?
It is. As an example, so at Standard Wellness, we don't manufacture beverages, right? But we certainly want to have beverages in our retail stores. So we acquire beverages from some of our competitors.
Now, out of curiosity, from your cultivation and your processing, would you sell your product to somebody who makes beverages?
Absolutely.
Okay.
In Ohio, we can sell dried material that they can further extract into oil and then infuse that into beverages. Soon, under the new rules, we'll actually be able to sell the oil that ultimately goes into beverages.
Okay. Now and I'm trying to think of an analogy, Jared, in my mind that makes this make sense. I think of it as a farmer who raises corn. He also cleans it and he also makes the corn into alcohol. Am I along the same lines of, because it's a raw material, right? Yeah. It's a raw material that can you grow it, raw material that you process, a raw material that you sell. So he can grow it, he can convert it into alcohol, and then he can sell it in his stores. It's the same concept.
Yeah.
We just need to get our head around the idea of, okay, it's marijuana. But at the end of the day, it's a raw material being processed and taken care of the way it is. And thank you for the clarification, because I think that's helpful. I'm curious to learn about how you came into this business and what is it that you see as some of the biggest challenges? Because I would assume the legislation is a big challenge, but it's also a huge opportunity.
100%. So starting with how did I get into this industry?
Yeah.
I had a really good friend and he said, still a great friend of mine. And he said, Jared, we are working to legalize marijuana in Ohio. How would you like to participate? And I joke with him, what he should have said is, Jared, you've created a pretty good life for yourself. How would you like to ruin it? Because and this is a joke, obviously. The challenges of marijuana are, and we're going to talk a little bit about the challenges. They're vast and there are a lot of headaches, from banking to taxes to regulatory to the illicit market competition to Delta 8 to insurance challenge. There's a million challenges that you wouldn't expect to face in normal businesses that we face here in cannabis. But a friend of mine asked if I wanted to help in the legalization efforts, and I did. And that's how I got into the business. Interestingly enough, though, I'm not a consumer of cannabis. And it's an interesting sell to much of the marketplace and to my employees, many of whom are very, very religious about the plant. Not religious in the sense that they worship the plant, but the fact that they really care for the plant.
Right. There's a deep passion for this, and rightfully so.
Absolutely. And I want you to know, I am a true believer in
Mhm.
medicinal benefits of marijuana. I've seen it firsthand. I've spoken to customers in our dispensary who are in tears because they can finally buy legally what they have been hiding for so long.
Yeah.
Uh, and many of my own family members have experienced incredible pain relief as a result of the use of cannabis. But I joined the company. I founded the company with several others. And it was, I had been in corporate finance and industrial manufacturing, the metals space specifically,
Wow.
for probably 10 years prior to getting started in cannabis. And in that industry, it's also tough. Their margins are very slim. You go out and buy used beverage cans for 64 cents a pound, and you turn around and you sell them for 66 cents a pound. It's difficult to make it work on that kind of margin. And we, depending on where the commodities were going, we were constantly in a state of hiring or, rationalizing production. And I
Sure.
said, I would like to get into a business where there is actual margin. And at the time, the market appeared to be relatively well controlled from a regulatory perspective. But as I always predicted that even though a small number of licenses would be granted at first, that it would grow and grow and grow.
Sure.
And that's happened in all the states. And ironically, margins in this space have come down dramatically to the point where it's almost like I'm backing numbers.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. The amount of work, where's the heaviest margin or where's the heaviest expense within the process?
Oh,
Since you're vertically integrated, I mean, you've got a lot of things to think about. Where's the biggest hit for
certainly
you on an
labor.
expense?
Labor is the biggest. Where we now have about 350 employees company-wide. And it's one of the things I'm most proud of. Like if none of this works out, we created 350 jobs, and that's 350 families that are
Yeah.
getting by. But that's the biggest expense. In the cultivation side, certainly electricity is a very large component of it. Packaging is a large expense. And clearly regulatory is a big expense too. I mean, in Ohio, we pay several $100,000 per year simply to have our licenses.
Yeah. Do you ever expect that to ever drop, or do you see it as a barrier to entry for somebody else?
I don't, it's written into statute, and there was an opportunity to modify it during the voter-led initiative, that the initiated statute. It didn't get changed in that process. And so I think the only way to change it is probably to go back to voters. And I don't think the voters of Ohio would really be interested in going to the ballot simply to vote to make it less expensive to operate a cannabis business.
So do you see that as a benefit to you? That it's somewhat of a barrier to entry for somebody new coming into the when you're talking about licensing, you're talking about the dispensary side. Am I accurate?
So
Or
cultivation is, I might get these wrong, so forgive me, but I think cultivation is like a $200,000 a year fee.
so there are
Like 100.
fees for each. Okay, I'm sorry. There's
Yeah.
fees for each one of your three businesses.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
And is it a barrier for entry? The real choke point is actually the license acquisition side, right? Originally in Ohio, it was a competitive process. More recently, it's been a lottery process. But there's only a limited amount of licenses that have been made available, and certainly there will be more in the next 1 to 2 years. But the process to get one of those licenses is very competitive. It's super costly. And I think if somebody wins one, everyone that you'll find a way to pay the exorbitant cost of having the license. The real trick is getting one in the first place.
Okay. Okay. So collectively, you've got three businesses. So I don't necessarily want to pick on one of the three, but I am interested in thinking about and learning from some of the lessons you've learned as you've put this business together. So walk us through, or walk around the ideas that you've had to come across as challenges and how you fixed them? Like what's some of the best lessons you've learned so far?
And best number one lesson is growing cannabis in a greenhouse is very, very difficult. Indoor grows are really the only way to compete in this space. That would probably ranks up there as one of our largest mistakes.
So wait a minute,
Second,
you say, I'm sorry, I want to correct. You said growing in a greenhouse is more complicated than growing indoors?
yes, and that's because assume it's 90 degrees outside in Gibsonburg, Ohio, where our cultivation facility is. It's 110 degrees inside the greenhouse because it's not climate controlled. And at those temperatures, plants are struggling to stay alive, let alone focusing their efforts on THC percentage, production or terpene production or bud structure. So in those really hot and humid areas, the plant has a hard time growing. Inside, where it's controlled by a complex HVAC system, where humidity
Okay.
and temperature is controlled, it's far easier to grow a higher quality product.
But that's where you said earlier, electricity is one of your biggest expenses because you have to maintain that climate control.
That's right. Yeah, and
Okay.
look, plants that drink a gallon of water every day and perspire a gallon of water every day, and you have 2,000 of those plants in a room, it's a challenge for the mechanical systems to kind of keep up.
The dehumidification and humidification would be battling all day long.
All day long. It's
Yeah.
like you really you work to get humidity up only to bring it down, only to get it up again and then to bring it down again. Your equipment is battling each other.
Okay. So what do you do to overcome that? Do you push everything seasonally into the greenhouse versus indoor? How do you manage this?
What
Because
I've
I see it as a business problem. So how
Yeah.
are you solving it?
So the way we're solving it is we won't ever expend money on a greenhouse again in any of our new builds. And secondly, any new capacity that we bring on will be indoors. And the greenhouse flower, in the fall and in the winter and the spring, we grow exceptional product in there. But in the summertime, we'll typically send that product to distillate, to extraction, to create oil. Because the quality of the oil is pretty similar, whether it comes from indoor or greenhouse or outdoor.
Okay. So you took a challenge, identify the best path forward. Okay, we're no longer going to use greenhouses. We're going to build for indoor. But since we have so many greenhouses, we might as well maximize production in the winter and spring to get as much product out as we can, because we know that is a really good growing environment and we can build get a quality product out. So you take advantage of that. So you've almost like split your operations into not a season, but indoor and greenhouse, and you know what you're doing now.
That's 100% correct.
Perfect. I love it because, and again, I want to take the growing side, and I understand the challenge that you have, but from a learned perspective, it's taking a look at a challenge that you have. What are my options, and how can I maximize my output or my profitability and efficiency? That's exactly what you did. You just found a new solution. Okay, we're not going to use that 100%, but we're going to use some percentage of that capacity to get what we need out of it. Brilliant. Move on, right? So what are some of the other challenges that you're facing outside of the growing, from a business perspective? What would you say are some of the biggest business challenges?
Financing is the hardest.
Okay.
And there's not much capital in cannabis from an equity perspective. Why is that? Well, it's still federally illegal. And so if you're Philip Morris, Altria, or GlaxoSmithKline, or one of these large organizations that would like to invest in cannabis, you can't, because you run the risk of losing your listing on the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ. And so that has been a barrier to bringing capital into the space. And so that trickles down, because that means private equity also won't invest into this space. So where do you raise money from? Well, you raise money from private individuals. And a high net worth, right? People that qualify under the exchange rules, but it's challenged to find the people that are interested in investing in cannabis.
Mhm.
Um, but then also more difficult than that is really the banking side. Sure, it's been tough when you have to deal mostly in cash. We've developed solutions for it. They're not great, but the hardest part is the lending environment. Traditional banks will not lend to cannabis. So what you have is credit funds that
Mm.
some people will go out and they'll raise a couple $100 million into a fund, and they will um, enter into transactions that look a lot like loans, but they come with between 15 and 20% interest rates, and significant amounts of issue discounts. Some of them have warrant features attached to them, exit fees that oftentimes drive the cost of capital, the cost of debt, well beyond 20% and close to 30%. And for a startup organization that is taxed in a terribly inefficient way and is regulated in a very expensive way, when you add 20 to 30% interest expense to that formula, you make it very, very difficult for people to operate. And you see it all over. There are many cannabis companies that are failing every day.
Yeah.
And
You
so,
would you would think it would be a no-brainer business, and it's not, right? Because of all the things you just said, the percentage on your money loaned, the taxes, and the regulatory and the licensing fees, it equals a very expensive proposition.
and I would add to you two other components. Number
Sure.
one is the illicit market, right? These are people who have grown marijuana for decades, and they are not just simply going to say, well, it's legal now, and so I'm going to stop my business and I'm going to go get a different job. They
Mhm.
are fighting very hard. And I'll tell you, I've said this before, I suffered from a fair amount of hubris when I got into this business thinking it would be easy, and it has not. And the illicit market, they oftentimes grow weed that's better than what is
Mm.
available at your local dispensaries. And some of the reasons for that are they don't have to pay for regulatory. They don't have payroll taxes. They don't have income taxes. They, they don't have they don't have testing, right?
Yeah.
And so all of those expenses really add up for us. For them, it's a bit of a free ride. Um, and so then the other component is, and I don't know how close to this market you are, but if you go into a gas station or a liquor store, you will find things called Delta 8.
Yeah.
And they can be purchased by anyone ages 5, any age. There's no age gate restrictions on Delta 8 products. And they incorporate intoxicating elements of, hemp plants and oftentimes marijuana plants. And both the federal government and to some extent, local governments have sort of ignored the birth of this marketplace. And there are some federal court rulings that give these people confidence that they're actually operating within the law. I don't think that's the case, but they are a huge industry now. And they also don't have to play by the testing rules or the onerous tax provision rules. And they get to have banking relationships that are normalized, even though they're selling the same product or very similar product to what we're selling.
Interesting. Interesting. You wouldn't think, I would think anything that's going to be changing the condition of somebody's mind would have to actually go through some level of regulatory before it can be sold in an open market form.
That's right. And now some states, to their credit, have said, we will allow these products, but they have to go through the ordinary channels that we've set up. Some states have flat out just said, you go ahead. Kentucky and Tennessee, even in some cases, Texas, have said, just go ahead and do what you want to do. Other states haven't really done much. Ohio was in that boat. And I think that there's will to get something done. I'm not sure
But
what form that will take, but we'll see.
Wow. Okay. Different, completely different business that we've talked about before. What are some of the greatest opportunities that you now have? Where do you see the growth for Standard Wellness?
I look at a couple of things. Number one, obviously, we're now in an adult use marketplace in Ohio, and so we should see the market double, triple, maybe quadruple. Um, that'll be a rising tide that helps many companies that had previously been struggling. But for us, in some of the other markets that we operate in, it's adding additional retail locations is really the key for our ability to deliver for all of our stakeholders. And um, and we're kind of lucky enough that the business is so hard that others are not making a good run of it.
Yeah.
And there are buying opportunities out there. It's hard, it's challenging. We acquired a dispensary in March of this year.
Okay.
We started working on that in March of the prior year. We submitted for regulatory approval in September of last year, and we finally were able to acquire it in March. So it's not easy to do deals in this space.
Sure.
But
Is that because of the regulatory piece?
yeah,
Yeah.
it takes a long time to get transactions approved. They oftentimes will do background checks on the
Sure.
people who would be the new owners, and yeah, there's just a lot.
How many locations or dispensary locations do you have now under the Standard brand?
So we have 5 open. We have 1 under construction. We have 2 in design, and we have 2 more that we'll be getting next year. So, and so that adds up to maybe a
10.
10.
10.
Yeah.
Okay. And in the next 10 years, how do you forecast the number of dispensaries?
In our current footprint, I need to get the business to probably 20 dispensaries in the states in which we currently operate. Should we choose to expand to other states, then that would obviously change.
Sure. So of the 5 that are currently active, are they all in Ohio or they're broken down some in Ohio, Missouri, and Utah?
3 in Ohio, 1 in
Okay.
Kansas City, Missouri, 1 in Springville, Utah, which we plan to move to the Salt Lake County, Utah.
Okay. Very nice. This is a lot more complex than I think a lot of people would give it credit for. It's a lot more diverse of a business because there is so many moving parts. And the fact that you are an integrated vertical business, I think you touch base on a lot of voltage rails, right? And your ability to navigate this in the way that you have to give yourself a solid footprint and an opportunity to grow, I have to believe you're well positioned compared to your competitors, but I don't know the answer. I would have to rely on you to tell me, yes, we are very well positioned and our competitors aren't going to be able to do or perform as well as we will. But it seems like you have the infrastructure and the strategy to move forward in a direction that others aren't necessarily willing or capable of going.
Well, I'd start by saying that I see competitors out there every day that do certain things better than standard all the time, right?
Yeah.
There's people's packaging that I like more. There are people that I think might have higher quality flower in some states. I think that the things that differentiate Standard Wellness are the states that we've chosen to do business in. They're all either medical or recently converted from medical to recreational, and they all have limited licenses. And then we focus on owning our real estate. And that has been a real differentiator for us because we are actually able to attract debt financing, whereas many others have not been able to do it. And you know, many of us on our team come from a corporate background. And so we run our company that's a private company, but we run it as a public company. We have quarterly results that go out to all of our investors. We have an earnings call every year that mimics that you would see from an SEC registered company. And we try to do all the things that will position us for success in the future.
I think what's interesting, and you just described what most people would be, I don't know about shocked with, but I don't think they would expect the level of transparency you have as a cannabis manufacturing, processing, and selling arm, to have that much transparency with your investors to let them know exactly how you're performing. You would think the cannabis industry would be so much cloak and dagger that you don't know what's going on behind the curtain, but you have a very open and transparent way of managing the business. I think that's what's going to bring you success, because everybody knows what's going on and you can work within that framework. So I give you credit for that. Before we
Appreciate
head out,
that.
no, it sounds great. Before we head out, I want to ask you, what advice would you give to somebody who's going to be an entrepreneur? Somebody who wants to own their own business. What advice would you give?
So Mike Tyson has a quote. He's like, I got comfortable being uncomfortable. Right.
Okay.
And it's like, you have to be ready for the arrows coming at you, and you have to roll with the punches. And, everyone's going to lose their cool at some point in time. Limit the amount of times you lose your cool, and try your best to roll with the punches, because they're coming. And it's not about whether you can take a punch. It's about how do you react to a punch.
Fantastic. I appreciate that. What's that old Rocky thing? Life's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
That's right.
That's a good one. It's a really good one. Jared, this has been great and unbelievably educational. I appreciate it. I'm very happy that you knocked the stigma off of this industry by opening up and saying it's a legitimate business, and there's different components and different areas that we focus in on in a very specific three-prong approach to a vertical market. I think it's wonderful that you're doing what you're doing, and I look forward to coming out and visiting and seeing how this all works. So thank you very much for the time. And everybody else, the information about Standard Wellness will be in the description down below. So make sure you click and visit the website and learn as much as you possibly can, because this is a great lesson in business and something I think everyone can take something home from. So thank you very much, Jared. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you, Scott.